Hearing none, I'll call for the question. I will note that we have members participating remotely today. So I'll start with our remote member, Judge Spitzer.
Aye.
Thank you. Chris.
Aye.
Steve. Aye. Ashley.
Aye.
Aye. Doug.
Aye.
Liz.
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning, Angela. How are you? We had to call a roll note for approval of the minutes. Thank you, Angela. Yeah, appreciate that. The proposed minutes from the April 10th, 2026 meeting will stand approved as presented. And the next item for consideration today is discussion of the annual report, 2025 annual report. And for purposes of leading that discussion, I'll turn the meeting over to Chris Bean. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Not a ton of substantive updates. As you all know, you've heard me say it many times, the report or the survey was due March 31st. However, we have extended it, probably open-ended, but we received a lot of counties that took advantage of that. So I'm still receiving the surveys, which is fine with me. I will be now, my patience is gone, I guess. I just want to sound like, I just heard from Michelle, like you got to stay on them. So I will be emailing the approximately 30 counties that still need to respond, understanding that June is also going to be a sort of potential quarterly meeting time. So hopefully we'll get some more results. We have, I think just not so surprisingly, again, funding remains the primary concerns. And there's various ways that they've stated that funding is the significant concern, but it was reported in almost every county that that's sort of the primary barrier that they have in terms of sustaining or even expanding access to local evidence-based practices. I think housing, sort of surprisingly this year, has shown up as a significant concern, regardless of county makeup. So we get it in our very rural counties, suburb counties or mixed counties, and then our urban counties. Behavioral health, 38 counties actually cited that as the top priority and area for change. So with that, I suppose one of our discussions today will be about the behavioral health work group, or the legislative work group, the competency work group. It's taken on a lot of different names, but all with the same sort of focus. So
good. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions for Chris regarding the annual report?
As one who turned it in late, like a few weeks ago.
We wouldn't have known unless you told us, Angela.
I would have suggested deadline next time instead of open-ended.
Well, and that's fine. We've done a deadline in the past, and we've had people that still submit afterwards. I'm not going to. I want the information. I don't care about the timeliness. So if this group is patient with when the report is actually done, I will exercise and take advantage of the patience so that we can get a good, thorough report. But I agree that maybe some level type of deadline is good.
That's a good point. I don't know if this is one of those situations, either Chris or Michelle, but if it is, and if it's not, I'll shut up quickly. But if it's not, sometimes when we have these reports that are driven by a legislative charge, it's hard to get the work we need to do done in time to sync up with the legislative deadline. So I don't know if this is affected by that, but I think that what we've thought about in years past is we really wanted to get the information so that we could be as beneficial as we possibly could to the local systems. But you're not wrong. So we have that discussion a lot internally about how to sync up those things without losing out on the most important thing, which is getting the data.
Yeah, and I will say, I send the survey out, let's say February. If they're meeting quarterly, which I think most counties report meeting quarterly, we've probably missed a January meeting or the first quarter. So we're dependent on them then receiving this and being able to get it on for like a early March meeting before the March 31st deadline. So it is in some way the March 31st deadline that causes a bit of an issue. Because even some of what I sort of anecdotally have classified a county as being a high functioning county, they say, well, we won't be able to discuss it until our June meeting. And when that's the case, I am happy to receive their information so that this is a much more thorough report. So I suppose if we can bump the deadline out to, let's say, June 30th, it will allow and capture more counties to adhere to their quarterly meeting schedule and still receive the survey. I prefer this one over the ones that submit it an hour after I actually release the survey.
Probably a little better info.
Yeah.
You know, looking forward, we had a similar discussion in another committee last Friday. And I think that unless somebody feels differently, my preference would just be, you know, pick a date that works, that gets you the most information. And, you know, that's my concern. But everybody's busy and these places are under significant stress with funding personnel. And so I can, while it's important to get the information, I can understand that it's difficult to get it collected in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I don't know. We're fortunate. We've got Denise here as well. Denise, was this something that you had anything that you wanted to comment on for the group?
So I know you're going to ask, thank you, Justice Goff, you're going to ask for some information in terms of a technical assistance update. We also review those annual reports, and that is really helpful information to CEPP in terms of guiding teams that are interested in getting TA. And then even this coming year, having some ideas around what we might want to start doing some webinars about. So Chris and I have had some conversation based upon information in the annual reports. You know, data continues to be one of those areas that are highlighted in the annual reports, and that might be something that we come back to wanting to do a webinar around this coming year. So we know all the reports aren't in, but we certainly value the information that's contained in those reports.
Thank you. Had a chance to go down to Clark County just a few weeks ago, and Richard was there, and it was really it was very interesting. It was very encouraging just to see how all of these things are coming together in the county-based system. So you had a wonderful big group there to learn about a project, an evidence-based project, and they'd really been able to bring that group together and have a meaningful discussion, bring some, I think, important resources into their community, in large part because of the technical assistance you've given them. And so I'm glad that these reports are proving helpful in that mission. So thank you as always. If there's nothing else then to discuss specifically regarding the annual report, I'm going to keep the discussion with Chris, but turn our attention to technical assistance. And so, Chris, over and above what Denise has shared, is there anything else that the group needs to be aware of in terms of technical assistance?
No, I think Denise will provide the best update on this, other than kind of these two. The survey and the technical assistance update can kind of go hand in hand because one sort of feeds the other. Technical assistance remains one of the top things that counties are asking for, not maybe specific to our work with CEPP, but things that sort of blend into what Angie's data work group is doing around data. And so over half of the 60 counties that have responded, or JRACs that have responded, are asking for some level of technical assistance, largely around data collection. So I think that's the most significant update around technical assistance, other than what Denise is going to provide around what's actually happening.
Good. Thank you, Chris. Well, Denise, is there anything else then that you want to share with the group?
Well, just to give you kind of an update about where we're at, we're working with 13 current sites. We've concluded work will conclude work in the end of June here with a couple sites we have been working with for about a year. And so we're taking on some new sites based upon information in the annual reports. We've reached out to some new sites, about 8 new sites that have expressed, at least in the annual report, having some interest around TA. And the thing that's kind of interesting with this is that sites that previously maybe have not been interested in this annual report, they've said, yeah, they might be interested in learning a little bit more about TA. So we are starting to reach out to some sites that we haven't worked with in the past, based upon their responses in the annual report. So again, highlighting the importance of the information that's in those reports. In this year, we also are starting a new contract year with IOCS in July. And the focus kind of in this next year is not only around TA directly to sites, but it's going to also be doing some webinar or local workshops within Indiana. We're working with Chris in terms of the topics of what those might be. There is the American Probation and Parole Association has their summer conference in August of this year. It's in Chicago. CEPP is going to be doing a workshop on intentional collaboration. And just given the work that you have done in Indiana with JRAC, which really is about intentional collaboration, we're going to be asking some individuals within Indiana to kind of help us participate in a panel discussion around highlighting just some of the great work that I think has been done through some of the JRAC teams in your state. So more to come on that, I would say. And the last thing is we've also had some conversation with Chris about doing peer learning or peer support with some of his staff and really beginning to help them learn about some of the work CEPP does around technical assistance specific to JRAC. And so we're going to be kind of like I'm calling it peer support. Others might call it mentoring, but we're going to be working with his staff to learn about the things that we do to be able to take on some of the responsibilities that CEPP does in terms of really planning for long-term sustainability of this work. Because I think TA is an important piece for sites as they go through this work. I think that's just one of the things we've learned is sometimes you have TA, you kind of get in a rhythm, and if TA goes away, sometimes it's hard to sustain that effort. So I think having additional staff within IOCS who can really support this work will be really helpful in the long run. So that's just another thing coming in this next year that we'll be working on with his office. And are there any questions? And topics. Go ahead. Thank you.
I was just going to open it up. A lot of exciting news, Denise. So we're always grateful to have you, and it's encouraging to hear what you've shared. So Denise has asked any questions from members of the work group?
Justice Goff, the only thing I'd say, Denise, peer support has this specific meaning in our lexicon now. So maybe a different name other than peer support that we could find might be good. Concept is great. Love it.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, Denise, had a conversation maybe a month or so ago, and I'd indicated to you that it might be at some point helpful to redirect some of your technical assistance maybe away from some of the county-based teams and talk to our bigger state players that are sort of responsible for some of the funding decisions to really help them understand where the rubber meets the road in terms of public safety. Judge Spitzer and I were part of we're trying to talk to some key players in the justice system about making sure there's sufficient funding for community supervision in particular, which is of specific interest to JRAC. But I just do want to keep that bug in your ear that I think that would be really good use of your time. And I think that it would be helpful information to our partners in the General Assembly and our partners in the executive branch just to really understand what you've been doing and how we can ensure that our scarce public safety resources are used as efficiently as possible.
And thank you for that. We have had some conversation with Chris about that. That is kind of, as we learn more in terms of what your goals are, what you want to accomplish and move on in that direction, we are happy to step in and offer some facilitation or guidance and help along that topic too. Certainly, we see an interest in that at the local level, really, especially again with these annual reports, local sites figuring out how they're going to continue to fund some of the justice initiatives they currently have going. So it's an important topic.
That's great. Well, always good to see you, Denise, and it's always great to hear about the important work that you're doing in our communities. So thank you as always.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Well, the next item on the agenda is something I think is generating a lot of excitement, and it also is you're going to do a lot, I think, in terms of improving efficiency. At least that's the hope, and that's a discussion about the new competency legislative work group that's been stood up in state JRAC. And so, keeping the conversation, Chris being led, I'll turn the discussion back over to him.
All right. So at the previous meeting, we talked about the creation of a legislative work group, primarily with the focus early on competency development and or restoration. Brittany Kelly is largely driving this, at least early on. And that is sort of focused through work with the Lifeman Group. To Angela's point about deadlines, helping things, we have sort of a grant, not a sort of a grant. We got a grant through DMHA to work with the Lifeman Group to really facilitate some early conversations around competency. The work group itself, the volunteers, has ballooned to I think roughly 25 to 30 individuals who are interested in being a part of this conversation. Many individuals from within this work group or this group and the state JRAC team, but then some individuals who are having these conversations externally. We were given a set of dates before September 30th. By that date, the funds need to be expended for the work with the Lifeman Group. It was impossible to find two sort of consecutive dates to conduct roughly 25 to 30 interviews in person or even virtually. However, forced to do so, we've settled on July 7th and 8th. It worked the best for the most individuals with the Lifeman Group actually being here in person. So the next step will be an internal meeting to start scheduling around the availability of those individuals. If those two dates don't work for you for in person, the Lifeman Group will be reaching out to you to conduct a virtual interview. The meetings or the interviews will happen in the South Tower of Cap Center in the Cap Center boardroom. So stay tuned. I think that's the most actionable thing that we have. Again, like Angela said, those deadlines really push things along. The next will be to start setting dates for this work group to actually start meeting and discussing. The Lifeman Group will do interviews and then create or put together a report. I think that will inform sort of the discussions and the agenda items going forward for that broader legislative work.
Anybody have questions for Chris regarding those tentative plans to connect with the Lifeman Group so that we can get their best assistance as we enter into these discussions? That makes sense to everyone?
Yeah, I'll just add, yeah, Brittany's been really good in responding and trying to coordinate schedules with the group too. So thank you guys for that.
You know, if anyone in here did not receive the scheduling poll that I sent out, know that I was 48 at the time. I've since turned 49. It still wasn't any better at the technical stuff. And so if you didn't receive the Microsoft form, which was the best way I could find for myself to schedule these, feel free to let me know if you're interested and didn't receive the survey. I'm happy to send it again. I'm still sending it to individuals as I keep getting people that are like, hey, this person would be really good to be on that or interviewed for that conversation.
I'm pretty excited about this. Some of you may recall back in 2020 when we began our work in earnest with the National Judicial Task Force to examine state court response to mental illness. We had some folks come out from the National Center for State Courts and lead a similar discussion. And it was intended originally to be an in-person discussion, much like we're hoping to have now in a few weeks, but the pandemic interrupted that. And so it focused more broadly on the entire behavioral health delivery system. This is going to be more focused on our competency restoration system. But one of the things I'm excited about is some of the same people that worked for National Center for State Courts and led those discussions are actually now with the Lifeman Group. So they're going to be very familiar with what we've done and where we've come from. I think they're going to be well prepared to just know. One of the things that's different now is I think that there's a real appetite and understanding to address this and fix the problem because it's causing such a financial strain and it's such a bottleneck in the system. So I'm optimistic that we're going to have some really good results from this. And to the extent that your constituencies are able to participate, have candid conversation, go through and do it, it's important for them to really understand what it is we're looking at so that they can give us their best possible advice. So thank you as always for your time. I know how busy everyone is, but this is something that's truly important. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great benefit to everyone who works in the system, but more importantly, those that we serve across the state. So again, this is pretty exciting stuff. If there are no questions, though, for Chris regarding our plans with the Lifeman Group, I'm now going to turn the discussion over to Michelle, who's going to give us an update on the work of our communications work group.
Thank you, Justice Goff. The communications work group last met in April, shortly after this group had met. The purpose in that meeting was for the members to give us feedback on existing resources we already have available online, those types of things. Several of the folks who are on our work group are from maybe our education team or from your offices as PIOs or your communication folks. So a lot of them are not engaged in the substance of JRAC on a day-to-day basis. So we took our first meeting to do more of an orientation and update on what our goals were as a committee. So the meeting we had in April was to kind of get their feedback, their reactions, their responses to what we already have, what are areas that we can improve, what are things that they liked, things they wanted to see, to be more communicative, be more clear on our website and on our resources. And then we were talking about opportunities to improve communication education systemically. One of the topics we talked a little bit about is, and this has been a long-standing request, trying to do a more uniform opportunity to help people with onboarding, whether it's onboarding at the JRAC level or maybe focusing at our level, at the state level too. And there might be some needs for onboarding resources, but also there might be points in the system where we want to onboard, folks who are in different roles. What's the points of contact or a chair of a local JRAC? What are their additional roles besides helping with the meeting? They communicate with our office, things like that. So we talked a little bit about that as one of the topics. We also talked a lot about the technical assistance that Denise helps with and some of the things that she's hearing from those opportunities to engage with locals, in addition to the review from the annual reports of what areas and content they need assistance with. Webinars is obviously one of those topics. Other things this group have mentioned, things like funding and grant opportunities and stuff like that being a topic. So the group worked through reviewing these, and they were asked at the end of last meeting to send any additional priorities, concepts, ideas to our team. In the meantime, Chris and Angie and I met with Denise All of us chairing different work groups or supporting different work groups, and Denise is providing all the technical assistance to try to formulate how this all works together, because the communications team can work with the substantive partners, but the substantive partners are the ones providing the content that's meaningful and impactful. So that collaboration among staff with a TA to try to help align this stuff with our strategic plan and other things was a meeting we held in May to try to get everybody kind of on the same page. Next week, Rose, who's our staff for the work group, and I are going to meet to prepare for the next communications meeting, which is on the 25th of June at 12:30. So my hope is by that meeting, we'll have at least two action items, probably only two action items that we could start dividing and conquering to try to get some work product out for the group to either update website, starting outlines for onboarding, different things like that. And then we'll have to circulate them amongst the subject matter experts to try to get meaningful content. To the degree we're going to do any kind of webinars around funding or resources, we'll have to partner with folks who have those knowledge bases around the different aspects of it, whether it's grants from our office or DOC, whether it's local funding issues, we would partner with AIC and their team. So identifying those opportunities and trying to get that mapped out. So if you have ideas, suggestions, things you want to see happen, please either let me know here, email me, email Rose, so we can get those on our list and try to get them in the priority order that's appropriate.
Thank you, Michelle. Anybody have any questions for Michelle or anything to share with the group? Any thoughts about how it's landed? Yeah, please, Angela.
I think what you're saying is one of the most important things for the local JRACs. I know Judge Spitzer and myself and Ashley sit on local JRACs. I don't know if anybody else in here does. One of the hardest things is probation and corrections live in multidisciplinary worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Not every other statutorily required member does. So I don't have that problem locally, but to represent the probation departments in the state, and a lot of them chair or vice chair the local JRACs. Not all of their members still don't know why they're part of this or why they should care about programming numbers. I know at probation conferences and correction conferences, we have breakout sessions on JRACs. I don't know if the sheriff's conferences do that or prosecutor conferences do that. But that's some of the feedback I've received from other chiefs in the state is it's the onboarding. So then we're spending, like I had to spend time for our annual report educating people what it was and what some of the language was in the annual report, which held it up some. But you have your local council member on there and you have a commissioner on there. And again, I don't have that problem, but a lot of counties do as to why that person wants to know why they're on there other than just it's a statutory required position. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about that.
Oh, I'm glad you did. Yeah.
And I'm going to say it again. I think local JRACs need little projects to do that are given by this group, even if it's just something small. Come up with a unified definition of recidivism for your county, or have some DOC data that's needed and that everybody can talk about and give their input in. And I don't know if that's something Denise sees of, what are we supposed to do? We meet, we check the box. Sorry, I didn't mean for all this to just come out. And I don't know if Ashley has anything she wants to help with, but it's been a struggle even in our county that is strong in a multidisciplinary setting to get our sheriff or a council member to care about, not care, that's a bad word, but like, okay, I'm gonna come to this, I'm gonna come to your meeting.
To understand what the purpose is and what they're supposed to be doing. I agree with you, Angela, and I think especially in a lot of the smaller counties, but even in some of the larger counties, if you ask our members of our association how their JRAC is ran and how it operates, they will tell you they are the vice chair or they are the chair, and they are the ones that are tasked with all the duties. And it ultimately ends up falling on them. And there's not a lot of input from the other statutory positions that are required. They show up, they do what they're supposed to do. It's not that people aren't interested. I think it's right now they understand it as it's another meeting they have to attend.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we struggle with, is it our position to educate them on why they're there? And then depending on those relationships, it could be difficult and it could actually prevent or, create the opposite effect of what you're going for than the inclusivity and the collaboration.
Yeah.
I was going to say one other item that came up in our discussion was the fact that we're approaching orientations for new stakeholder groups. So the end of this year, beginning of next year, with all the turnovers that occur because of elections and terms and stuff, there's some possible opportunities for us to have, can we target something that would fit in those, just to give a broader education to folks on what this is and why does it need to be important for your calendar to attend, because we all know that the system impacts, one widget moves, all the other widgets have to adjust. And that's maybe good or bad, depending on what that move looked like and how it impacted others. And so I think kind of emphasizing some of those points would be something that we can also incorporate into looking at that. So that was one of the other education pieces I forgot to mention earlier, is people were concerned about orientations, and is that an opportunity to start getting to a larger group of people quicker, who are not necessarily coming with any preconceived notions about what may or may not happen in the past. So if you have suggestions, ideas, outlines of topics, please send them to me.
I have some thoughts on this, because I think this is a really important discussion that Angela and Ashley really, in this work, their constituencies do the heavy lifting, right? I mean, because you're the connectors, and Steve might say, no, we actually have all the things in jail too, and he's not wrong either. Those are challenging jobs, but you play all sorts of different roles within the system, and you are pros. You become very well versed in it. Chris Cunningham's here. He knows that drill as well, attend virtually. But what I guess I want to say is, be as encouraged as you possibly can be with all of that weight and responsibility, because where we've come from versus where we are now in terms of our ability to, most importantly, I think, be responsive to the needs of our county-based systems and hear from them in a unified voice is tremendous. And when we created this, that was really the main function, is to be driven in our criminal justice policy, at least that policy that affects community-based supervision, right? You got that big state-funded shared resource in the DOC, but we really wanted to be responsive to the needs of our communities, and we had no way to hear from all the different constituencies because there was nothing that connected them together. And the original version of that statute had the chair being the circuit court judge or their designee, and that model really aligned with what the National Center for State Courts tells state judges to do, which is go into your community and be a leader, convene all the stakeholders. And so that's important. But yeah, Chris.
Thanks, Justice. I think this is a great opportunity for state JRAC to help the local JRACs and maybe target like the first quarter next year. Every county's local JRAC meeting is simply an overview and an orientation, while all the members are together. And that's, the education team or CEP could help with that. From a prosecutor perspective, there are going to be at least 27 new elected prosecutors, as many as 33. And while many of these 27 to 33 are chief deputies or deputies, there's a good chance they've not been involved in local JRAC in any way. And Steve Luce, you probably have the same with sheriffs, and David with county officials. So possibly you just target that first meeting of the first quarter. Hey, this is orientation, and everyone kind of gets the same information that way.
Yeah, I actually think that's a great idea. And one of the things I think we should consider with respect to the communications work group is if we had some sort of a regular communication that could go out, I think it might be important for that group to hear especially from Angela's group, from Popeye, from IACAC, because that's really kind of I said, in this type of work, the groups that are hearing it. And I think Chris is right. That would be really wonderful to have some sort of uniform orientation. Would just say as well, we had a group come and speak to the Sheriff's Association annual conference just a few months ago, and make that same offer to any other group. That I think it's important for everybody to understand what the purpose is. It's really just connect everybody together and be able to effectively share the responsibility of providing public safety locally when you're doing something that substitutes for that public safety being provided by a common state funded institution, which is what happens if people end up going to prison. And Angie, please.
Chair the data work group committee, and one of the things that we are working on right now is coming up with kind of that top 5 things that you should report out. Excuse me if I don't choke. At JRAC meeting. So one of the things though that we're talking about when you're looking at this is who brings that information, because I think that the coordinator or the person who's chairing, co-chairs, they get stuck with all the things. But I think that adds value to the people coming if they have to bring information from their shop and say, here's my information and how does it contribute? And so I think that's part of it when we're looking at like jail data. Does the jail bring the jail data? Does the, community supervision bring all of that? Who's doing that? And then one of the things we have included in our top 5 behavioral health resources to engage that group as well is like, if you're looking, are you looking at capacity, what you have, what option, and giving them something to bring to the meeting and get feedback on, I think is going to be helpful to fulfill value. I also think, and probably because of the grants that I do all the time, is that you've got to look at the funding. And when you're talking about commissioners and county council and all that, like what is the local funding that supports criminal justice activity? Where does all that money go? And bringing that information so everybody can see all of those things, I think adds some transparency, but also adds some value into why you're here to understand the cost of doing business, if you will. So that's all I had to say. Sorry.
The only other thing I would add is when some of those stakeholders come in, certainly there's turnover in the sheriffs, and there can be with the prosecutor's office as well, although there's not a term limit for the electeds. The stakeholders that are really important that'll have even less familiarity with the day-to-day operations would be David's constituency. And because they're such an important piece of the system, they're responsible for most of the funding of the local system. I would just remind you all that David's a wonderful resource. And I mean, they are faithfully here at everything, and they're all in. And so it's really important to just remember that you don't have to field all of the questions when they come. You can refer folks to David's shop and he can connect them. And, Chris and Steve, I just tell you that same goes as well. You know that, I know you field them, but we're always open. Our staff is here and available to try and work through things locally. That was the kind of the idea behind the organizational structure. So I really know this is hard, and I know it's particularly hard right now with all of the financial pressures that are on local systems. But we are with you. We're here to support you, and we're also here to help you field some of those tough questions when you come. So just remember that network exists for you to connect and communicate the problems so that we can try and help you get them solved.
Thank you. I think Judge Spitzer has a.
Oh, yeah, Judge
Hand
Spitzer, I'm
raised.
sorry. Didn't see your yellow hand.
Yeah, so I'm wondering that, and I know we've got some of this stuff on the website, but I'm wondering if we created an orientation toolkit. And so maybe, and Chris Cunningham had put some stuff in the chat here. We do some things in Grant County to try and get our new people oriented, and it involves some of the foundational documents. And I think we've got, if we a YouTube that would maybe sort of explain, what JRAC is and why they're an important part of it. And then, so you can think of just kind of what things the toolkit might include. And a lot of it's probably some stuff that's already on the website, but then pushing that out at the beginning of the year, or at the end of the year, anticipating the beginning of the year as new people are coming on. I think that might be something, not just letting it live on the website, but pushing it out to the local JRAC so they know that that resource is available. And that may be helpful to them. So thinking just a package of, YouTube's webinars, some documents that are important, kind of a history and why it's important. That maybe we could create something like that. And then I just echo the orientation for the new, making sure that we have a presence at the orientation trainings for the new people, because that normalizes that JRAC is part of your job, right from the beginning. And so I think both of those would be pretty good tasks for our communications work group.
I think too, if we could have
Thanks, Judge.
I can sell JRAC to other chief probation officers. I'm gonna guess the random sheriffs across the state might not listen to me as to why a JRAC's important, but they would listen to the Rush County Sheriff or a commissioner in Montgomery County, would listen to the Grant County Commissioner.
Yeah.
So if we had some counties that are really doing it like it's supposed to, because I also believe if you're running a JRAC and you're running on all cylinders, it'll be monumental for your county.
Yeah.
And life-changing.
Yeah.
For the system. So I don't know if there could be if David would have a list of okay, I know these commissioners and council would be willing to talk to others in the state that have questions, or if Steve has sheriffs that we love JRAC and we'll talk to new people also.
And I think if we could identify each stakeholder, why JRAC benefits them and what the purpose is, as you mentioned, Justice, is to get our local concerns to the state and to be heard as a collective group. If we can express those goals and express the benefits to each stakeholder individually, I think that is going to go way farther than right now, which is it's a group and hey, we're meeting and we're supposed to be evaluating and seeing what we can improve. I think we have to get down to how does this benefit this prosecutor? How does this benefit the commissioner? How does this benefit the public defenders in our counties, and all the different things that local JRACs can do, or the things that benefit them. Like I know there are some JRACs that operate or have the authority to manage the opioid funds. That is a big incentive. And I think there are just a lot of stakeholders that don't understand, because the local counties don't all know collectively what they can do and how great it can be when it is running on all cylinders.
Yeah. Agree. Yes. And a lot of that works. Yeah, please, David.
We'll have hundreds of new members, right? In December, and we do training for council and commissioners, but for all they need to learn, it is only a 2 to 3 day event. All right. And so a lot of it is, open door law, legal and ethical issues, hiring and firing and all that. So not to say this isn't important, but and we need to do a better job of promoting it. And I wonder if after we get through December, we could organize it, at least for our new members, a Teams meeting. And, when they're new, they're generally more willing to get on Teams meetings, enthusiastic. And so maybe we can organize something in January, sort of while they're still fresh, some kind of Teams meeting, get to all of them. And if they're local judges and local people urge them to get on the Teams meeting, I think that could be very beneficial and an efficient way to try to educate people. So.
We're in, and if there's anything we can do to assist you in that, David, we'd be happy to. Your constituent was probably the first. You put out a couple of YouTube videos, right, when the legislation passed.
Yeah, we have.
And there were at least a couple of joint presentations to your annual conference that I know of. So it is, though, as everyone noticed, when there's turnover in these organizations, it's not a one and done. And JRAC's not a one and done, right? It's a continual thing. So these are important discussion points to keep in mind. And I think for sure they're great work for the new work group to do. But if we could, if that's something you're interested in, David, I would
yeah.
encourage you maybe to put that on your PIO's radar, and then we'll have it on our to-do list, and it'll get to be an agenda item so that we can make it happen. I do like the idea, whether or not that becomes the orientation or we have a more broad orientation, as Chris suggested, and Judge Spitzer, I think rightly said, let's supplement with some materials that we really think about that, because that would be really helpful.
I think the biggest part, and I like all of the ideas that we've had, and they're similar to what we've talked about a little bit in the work group too, is ensuring though that, like, if you have an example like Grant County, Chris, if you want to send me your stuff, but anyone else has an example of what they do, what their talking points are, so we can help make sure that we're covering the things that are resonating with the different stakeholder groups. Really, the content building is probably the most challenging because we are talking to each stakeholder group in a general sense. I do think that we'll be able to have some opportunities in the future to siphon down and, David get his group together. We could talk about this from the commissioner perspective in another forum or a more in-depth way versus a general orientation. I think all layers are important, because people will learn stuff at different places and spaces and come to it in a different way, depending on how they get involved. Are they involved because they're just interested and it's out there, they've heard about it, they heard people talking on the street about it, or is it that they're actually the proxy for the group, or they're actually a member of the group? There's lots of ways that we can get information to folks, and I don't think any one way is the only way. So I think we can build this in some layers and have some modules maybe that are a little more sophisticated. For how do funders engage with substantive matter experts to make sure they're actually understanding what they're funding and making better decisions around how they're supportive of those opportunities versus the sheriff. Hey, I'm full. What are you all going to do? That affects half the room, right? So those are lots of in-depth conversations that could be illustrative of why it's important to come. So I think it could be a multi-layered type approach too, not just a one and done, but even for an orientation, having something very general and then having some specific modules that come from stakeholder groups available.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking before the suggestion was made about an orientation. Was we have one publication that goes out to all the judges every week, and it's the weekly message. It was something that was important to the chief, so that to check that once. The local JRACs meet quarterly, so if nothing else, as part of your agenda item you had on that, these are items of concern for the different constituency groups. It seems to me that might generate some helpful discussion and keep folks on task. And I don't know if, I heard you say, Michelle, that you were trying to connect the subject matter experts to the PIOs so that they were not only learn how to speak JRAC to the different constituencies, but they were having something useful to say. So that might actually be important too. If Steve, it's important to talk about, the serious mental illness in the jails as a problem. That would be important for all 91 systems to be communicating on a regular basis. Chris's message is we're shorthanded and we have trouble getting to this meeting. That would be important to be communicating up through all 91 members, and sort of the same thing, but just the ability to actually have what is of critical importance to each state level constituency. That would be a way, I think, to make the group discussions probably more productive.
I think if we educate each of them on the benefits of JRAC and that being their microphone to the state, I think that is a huge benefit for anyone involved. And I think that is missed in a lot of the counties, that they don't realize what an opportunity the local JRAC is in order to get those concerns that each individual is having at the higher level. And I think that is a key piece of the orientation piece, that the purpose of this, and this is where you can go at your local level to get your concerns addressed at the higher level. I just don't know that everyone is seeing it in that light. And I think that's a big key proponent of it.
I think it's a delicate balance for us. One of the more, I would say, ubiquitous sentiments in my 10 years here in certifying problem-solving courts, court alcohol and drug and pretrial is, don't tell us what to do. The state does not need to tell us what to do. We don't want to hear it. You're from Indianapolis. Don't tell us what to do. However, please tell us what to do.
Yes.
Like, and so I feel like I wasn't involved in the early framing of JRAC or local JRAC. But I'd like to think that it's broad enough and general enough that says, here's the structure. You get to do with this as you wish. We're not going to tell you all because not every county has the same issues as Stark County. Not every county has the same issues of Lawrence County. And so they're unique enough. And I think that the intent is to retain a level of autonomy so that the state is not telling you what to do. Like, we don't need to go in and tell every county your judges need problem-solving court training, because there's 30 plus counties that would be like, we have no problem-solving courts. We don't need that. And so I think to you, what you're talking about is how do we get that? Like, this is yours. Just tell us
It's ownership.
what you
Yes.
want. And I think Justice Goff has always been really great with the tiny gear illustration. This is truly a bottom-up conversation. And it is, whether it has been exercised this way or demonstrated, it's probably the first of its kind in Indiana where we've honestly said, please tell us what you want, rather than, no, this is what the evidence says, do it. Like, how does it apply to you? What are your actual local resources and what do they look like? What are you able to do and how can we help you work within what the evidence in the framework says? Yeah.
The approach, since the last state JRAC meeting, when we had the presentation from, on the competency or state hospital, and the timing was really good because then we went into the state. I had 5 statewide sheriff meetings, and on purpose, because it's a transition period this year. So we're meeting a lot just to keep them focused. And my approach to the sheriffs was, hey, sheriffs, this is the first time I've really heard the state or an entity from the state kind of raise a hand and say, hey, we need your help.
Yeah.
So taking that approach, I kind of pulled them in to more to now we're back to this is going to be our number 1 or 2 priorities for legislative session. And we know we have people leaving. So we also, conversation came out of it before we have our new sheriff's school in December, which I'll be reaching out to some of you. We're going to have about 10 days after the election, we're going to have a luncheon for all our current second-term sheriffs and new. And my thought, actually, I was looking for a presenter to meet everybody, Justice Goff. So I'll be asking, but to me, that's a perfect opportunity. If I can have, I know you guys are busy, Michelle, but just having 6 or 7 slides that we can present, because I know enough to talk about it, but that's the first time I get to talk to the people.
Yeah.
And same thing at the new sheriff's school. That's my time to have them buy into what we're trying to do. So that's the approach we're going to take. But I think if we could have just some information, because to me, when they come to a new sheriff's school or a luncheon like that, they're going to see how wide, how important it is to collaborate. And that local JRAC, by putting that out there early, some of them have never dealt with the prosecutors, the probation, but now they're going to have to.
Yeah.
So how can we introduce the importance of collaboration and being part of this?
But Steve, anything you need that I have, you've got, that. And that's really important, though. It's not corny to say that, but what I always find is when you help somebody who works in the criminal justice system understand that at any given moment, you could be the most important person in the criminal justice system in the state, because you never know when tragedy is going to happen. You never know when something big is going to require your best. And it's really important to understand sort of the delicate web that we have to draw on so that you are able to meet that moment. I really believe that, because that's what I've seen through the course of my career. And I just understand how delicate it is. So I understand completely how difficult this is. We just completed over the course of a month, my colleagues and I traveled the whole state, 10 meetings, and we heard from all the judges. And it's really tough out there. And the resources in the communities are very disparate. So, I was in a big $300 million new courthouse that had more security than my old sheriff's department has on the whole manpower. And then I was heard from a judge whose county had sold their courthouse to the Historical Society, and they were in a basement in a bank building with no security. And so just helping our partners in the General Assembly understand that we work under very different conditions, that we have very complicated funding structures. I don't know a snappy way to say that, but I mean, we do depend on all of you who are leaders in your respective fields to buy in and tell us what you need to meet the moment. And we know we're not there, and that's kind of the nature of all this work, right? I mean, you're always operating in scarcity, but we are moving towards a better spot, and we need you. We need you to stay along with us, and we need you to communicate that we need your people.
So I can Popeye do a summer assembly collaboration each year. We've been doing it for the last couple of years. This may be a good opportunity for us to put something together to provide to our members on each person they can contact at the state level to help get their local people involved.
Yeah.
So maybe I can get with Michelle and see if we can get the contact information if everybody is in agreement that you guys would be okay with us providing your information to our members if they need to kind of get some reinforcements with their local sheriff or their local commissioner that could connect people directly potentially.
I think it's like to the degree we can get to a shared, I may say, set of materials, right? Slides, contact information. How do we do those things? I think that is one of the great values of having that run through a communications work group. We have multiple, disciplines represented on there. You guys have all set representatives, which we appreciate. And then having that solidified, it's easy to add the notes and talking points and please emphasize X or Y. And if we all can, agree to that, then it's easy for everyone to use at any of the opportunities they have available, whether it's orientation or some of those summer opportunities. So in order to fit your time frame, though, and you guys are talking summer, when is your summer institute?
Mid-August.
August, okay.
I think this year it may be the 20th,
Then
21st.
It says December, so, okay.
If we were to have a subject matter expert in each of the constituencies, is everybody like, if somebody wanted to contact, Sheriff's Association or IPAC, would it be you, Chris, and you, Steve?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I think that'd be important to know, is just like if there's somebody else that's designated within the organization that
Mhm.
they have that contact information. So, because they're already frustrated, we don't want them double frustrated if they call. But like I know I direct them to probably Chris with respect to this conversation as a first line, but that's just something to keep in mind. I just think it's an excellent idea, but that might really sort of streamline what we're communicating, is if we had sort of the point person as the connection piece.
And then I think as you were talking, a layered approach. So then if they contact Steve, he could then also get them to
Each
the
of the
sheriff in Grant County,
Yeah.
who sits on a local JRAC and maybe went through a clunky beginning period, but is seeing the work that benefit their county.
Mhm.
Well, and I think it goes back to what you said, not all sheriffs are going to listen to a chief PO or a director of
Yeah.
community corrections, but they are going to pay attention when the head of their
Yeah.
association is speaking, and give it a little bit more weight, if not a lot. So I think that's one way for us to connect them to their peers that they understand and respect, and at least would take what they're saying with a little bit more veracity to it.
I do think the contacts for each group, like depending on the subject matter, is important to get them to the right person fastest so they can get the technical assistance they need or the help they need. Like I'm thinking grants, I would send them to Angie or I would send them to, Liz's team. But I also think us emphasizing their connection to the state level through their stakeholder rep on state JRAC too.
Right.
So I think both things are impactful for different reasons. So I think fleshing that out would be something that we can easily do in this type of content.
And there may be a lot of disconnect at the local level that there is a state level JRAC, right?
Mhm.
So I think just even that in itself is an education piece that
Right.
maybe a lot of stakeholders are missing.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would kind of get ready to ramp it up because there's going to be a lot. I know 50 sheriffs coming in and are going to say, what is a state? I mean, it's all new
Yeah.
learning for us.
Yep.
So, however we can get it out in front of this, my approach has always been a coaching approach, because in my organization, I'll just say they all have egos and nobody wants to be the bad guy. So that's my job. And I have a way I do it, but it's more or less, if you're not at the table, they're going to talk about you. And if you're not at the table, you're the meal. So, and I also tell them that, tell them you want to, you don't want them to drive your bus, but you want to be a passenger. So it's working. It's working because a lot of them see that as the avenue and the place to start locally to get things in shape. And of all, it's all about those relationships you can build. So hopefully, a lot of great ideas and whatever we can do to help, but I know we lean on you guys a lot and you guys do an amazing job. So we appreciate that.
Justice Goff, I think Chris Cunningham may have put a hand up. Sorry, Chris, if that's not true.
Chris, did
No,
you
it's
just
true.
add? Yeah, please. We want to hear from Chris.
True or false?
I was just going to comment on the fact that really three things. One, leadership. If you don't have good leadership or a system for leadership in place, then it really doesn't matter. And that leadership, the second point is relationships. Everything rises on relationships. So I love the state and I love all they do. But the individual things that are going on in their county, they look to that leadership group. And so that's we're lucky enough to have great judicial leadership, and that helps build those relationships. We were blessed early on with EBDM and the development of great technical assistance for JRAC, but none of that would have happened without great leadership. So I don't know how you teach it. I don't know how, you go through that part of it. And then the third thing is you got to have situational awareness about what's going on as part of JRAC. So for us, we have, Steve, I know this will surprise you, but we have a jail overcrowding issue, and which exists in just about every county in the state. So we had a work group that looked at, okay, what are alternatives that we can look at locally, and that has continued to energize our local JRAC on what's being done, and we've come up with alternatives that have got buy-in from the commissioners, the council, and the rest of the criminal justice system. But developing work groups that gives the players something to do outside of the meeting. And again, it will not surprise you that probably Mark Spitzer, Judge Spitzer, is either the chair or the co-chair on many of those committees, because the courts have a great influence in what happens with the jail. So those are just three things. And the onboarding part of it, we recorded videos, and each one of us took a point in our role in EBDM at that time, but local JRAC. We provided the documents to the board about the Indiana story, EBDM, a lot of things. We do an onboarding for every new board member. Ours is probably different than what I hear others talking about. Ours is unified with our Community Corrections Advisory Board. I don't know about you, but elected officials don't have time to go to two separate meetings that maybe are two separate areas. So having one meeting helps us stay on track. We divide the agenda up. Judge Spitzer was our leader on that group, and now he's the vice chair. We have our Superior Court 3 judges. So all that makes all that happen. And I don't know I don't know if it's the state. I don't know how all that is, but leadership, relationships and situational awareness. Those are the three things that, but I don't know how you teach it. I feel blessed to have all that around. And then I feel so sorry for people who are struggling. But I don't know how to fix it, but I just wanted to share that if you can do some of those things and have some of those things involved, it'll be successful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's always good to see you, my friend, and appreciate your insight. Angela's topic of great interest and concern, so I think it was a good discussion, and appreciate your bringing it to the forefront. Anything else to bring before the group? Please, David.
Quickly, great conversation, appreciate it, and we'll do a better job of educating our members on the importance of this and the efficiencies that it brings. I do want to let the group know, many of you may or may not know that not only did local government finance change tremendously in the last few years, the local income tax did as well. And so we're doing a ton of presentations on that for our own members, but some of your members have reached out because they've become concerned about the public safety income tax, in essence, being eliminated and rolled into the new county services local income tax. But if any of your members ever want us to attend a meeting, or I can give you access, we probably have 5 training videos we've done in the last 2 months to educate our own members on the changes. And the changes aren't going to happen until 2029 now. But still, going forward, if we're going to build a new jail, use income taxes, we're not going to have a separate rate. It's going to be part of our 1.2 rate. Or if we're going to take money off the top for prosecutors or public defenders, or the judicial income tax also is rolled into that.
Mm-hmm.
So if any of your members ever have questions about what the new system looks like compared to the old system, be happy to do a presentation or send you our videos. And then we've also invested in what we call a local income tax calculator. Our members are under tremendous pressure to try to figure out this new system. So we worked with the vendor and created basically a calculator that shows them how the new system interacts with the county, the cities and towns, and then the townships and other levels of government. So if you ever want a presentation on that, be happy to come and show you how that works. Because I think it will be important this fall. Counties can have a meeting of the county and all the cities and towns. Would have a representative on this new board to have a little bit of flexibility on what the new income tax looks like. And there is still limited resources, right? And so I would urge your members to find out when those meetings are going to be and to attend, and to sort of put in a word for themselves to say, under the current system, we get X amount of money from the public safety income tax. That's going to be rolled into the new county services rate. Please make sure that rate is high enough to continue the funding stream that we receive now from the public safety income tax, or the PSAP tax, or the judicial tax. So substantial changes. We were supportive of many of the changes made to the income tax, but our calculator easily explains how the new system operates and how much revenue will be generated from each rate, if that makes sense. So just want to put that out there.
I think that's critical information. I would request we get that included in a Wednesday message as well, and maybe just a concise statement, David's willingness, but then also if we could get the link or some information.
Yeah, we can send the videos. The software link is the software is proprietary, and only the county auditor will have access to it for us. But if you just call your auditor and say, can you set aside 30, 40 minutes and kind of show me how it works, or show me what the revenue stream is currently for the county versus what this new system would generate for the county, they'll be happy to do that for you.
Yeah, if we could connect that up to the judges, but the chairs, that would be something that probably ought to be a local agenda item.
I'm gonna say that might be a good topic for us to partner on, and
Yeah.
then we can craft the weekly message, but also use as an opportunity for
Yeah.
a static message out to local JRACs.
Yeah,
We already have ways to communicate in addition to posting on our website, things that may be a topic. I know funding was one of our hot topics in our last communications meeting, so I'll be happy to work with David on that.
Jamie put a lot of that together. I know you know
Okay.
Jamie now. So
Yes, I meet with her on Monday.
yeah.
Thank you, David.
Judge, we had, in May, we had two legal updates, north and south, and David's group came and presented on this topic.
Yeah.
Their subject matter expert, and a lot of good questions from the sheriffs. It was great information. So we sent the PowerPoint out to everybody. So we're getting them thinking already about also this as a partnership with David to talk to our legislators about how it may affect services.
Good.
And really, it's that new jail, right? I mean, under current statute, and not to get bogged down in that, but counties would go to the General Assembly and ask for a special income tax rate to build and operate the jail. Under the new system, they say that don't come to ask for that special rate. It's going to have to be within the 1.2 capacity that we have. So again, we need to make sure we set some of that aside in the future when the sheriff comes and says it's time to expand or update the jail, that we still have that capacity within the 1.2. That makes sense, right? I mean, so you don't want a county to use their full 1.2 for operations and then suddenly 7 years from now, well, now we need a jail and we're out of capacity. So it's substantial changes, but just a lot of education for our own members. And then again, I think for your all's members too, to understand this change. And that you're really going to have to, I know you all communicate with your councils now, it's budget times, but I think to be aware of the new changes, just so you can sort of stake out, a position for you to make sure that the county though continues to operate, continues to fund your current operations. It doesn't think they can cut the income tax more than what they are collecting now.
Thank you, David. Any other business to bring before the work group? Well, hearing none, that concludes our agenda items, and our next meeting is scheduled to take place on August 7th at 9:30 a.m. in this same location. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you.